Jesus.
So today we're going to continue our conversation on transforming hostility into hospitality. And one of the places I think that's easy for us to start is to think about the forms of hospitality in our very ordinary, everyday relationships. So the relationship between a parent and a child, between a teacher and a student, between marriage partners.
The temptation is and always remains to cling to our children, to use them for our own unfulfilled needs, and to hold on to them, suggesting in many direct and indirect ways that they owe us so much. A good host is not only able to receive his guests with honor and offer them all the care they need, but also to let them go when their time to leave has come.
Henry Nouwen says that we will never believe that we have anything to give unless there is someone who is able to receive. And so another word for hospitality might just be receiving, the kind of work and attitude that allows us to receive another person in all of who they are, in all of their glory and splendor, without trying to change them or conform to our own ideas of who they should be, or satisfy some deep craving of loneliness that's within us. And the best teachers are the teachers who are able to freely see us as we are and kind of call the best out in us.
Yeah, Bonnie, when you describe that, I just think about something a former boss of mine once said when I worked as a chaplain, who would encourage us in terms of relationships, both with coworkers, loved ones, family members, patients, since this was a chaplaincy, to release the outcome. Hospitality, like you said, so much is about receiving the person. But I think before we can truly receive someone, we have to release our own expectations of that person. Because unbeknownst to them, they might be walking into a scenario where I'm expecting X, Y, and Z out of them. I want the conversation to go this way, and I want them to respond that way and think this way. Well, then I've just created a huge roadblock to true hospitality, knowing, and vulnerability when I do that. What does it look like in terms of the church and hospitality and being together to release the outcome?
Yeah, I feel like in the church, the first thing we have to release is the hope that newcomers will think and believe and act just like us. Mm-hmm. Right? Like wanting people to do everything just the way that we do is kind of the opposite of hospitality. It doesn't honor the real gifts that God has placed in this newcomer that we could receive and could bless us, and God forbid could change us.
Yeah, I think about one of the first churches I served would jointly with some other churches get together and put on a movie night in town. And it was a town that had a lot of poverty. And so people would come out because they could get some free food and get some free entertainment and that stuff. And I struck up a conversation with a community member who came, and we were chatting for a while. And then I said, well, I'm going to get going. I'm going to head back. They're breaking down and I want to help out. And he said, oh, do you think I could help too? It's like, yeah, absolutely. Come on, let's go see what we can do. And then when we went over, some very dear, sweet church members, when this community member tried to help, said, no, that's okay. Like no, we've got this. And instead send him home with some more food. And I could tell in this community member's response how rejected and sad he felt, that he had kind of brought out he didn't have money or anything else to offer, but he had brought out the gift he had that he could help. And it was rejected. Instead, they wanted to keep the relationship very one directional. We give you stuff, you don't give us anything. And I think that's a challenge a lot of our churches face is how do we release the outcome and just receive what people have to offer? Because as somebody who wants things done a certain way, sometimes I know when people offer to help, like this community member, my fear is something silly like, well, what if he doesn't put stuff back in the way I think it should be? Which, what a silly thing to worry about. That can be fixed. This relationship should be more important than making sure the hot dog buns are in the right bin.
Yeah, Henry Nouwen speaks about a certain emptiness a certain poverty that's required for us to be truly hospitable. If we're so full to the brim with our own ideas and ways of doing things and seeing the world, then we don't have any space inside of us to truly welcome something that's different. And when we think about our political climate right now and how much we fill ourselves with a certain ideology or a certain way of thinking, we're so full to the brim of that. It can be really hard work to just sit and listen to what another person is bringing to the conversation or bringing to the space. And in fact, we can feel a certain need to defend ourselves and defend our ideologies before truly listening. And that like defensiveness is also kind of makes it hard to be hospitable.
Once we have given up our desire to be fully fulfilled, we can offer emptiness to others. Once we have become poor, we can be a good host. It is indeed the paradox of hospitality that makes us a good host. Poverty is the inner disposition that allows us to take away our defenses and convert our enemies into friends. We can only perceive the stranger as an enemy as long as we have something to defend.
Yeah, we find ourselves getting defensive when we feel that we have something that we need to protect or defend against others, whether that's our certain views of the world or the way things should be. And that part of the Christian journey is self-emptying, is letting go of those things to make room for others and room for God. And it makes me think of something that's true in beekeeping. So I have 3 beehives in my backyard. And beehives go through a cycle through like winter, spring, and fall. And in the spring, when things are warming back up and flowers are just starting to come out, is when the hive starts to get active again. And it's also when the hive is often at its most vulnerable, because it's just come through winter. The bees have eaten their food stores. The hive is at its smallest as far as number of bees. But this is also the time when it's the easiest to work with the bees. They're a lot calmer because they don't have anything to defend. And so when you open the hive to check on them, they just kind of ignore you because there's not much going on. They're just too busy trying to build themselves back up for the season ahead. But in the fall, when the hive is at its biggest and they have filled their hive with honey and pollen and everything else that they need to make it through the winter, is when it's the hardest to work with them, because the flow of nectar out in the wild has slowed down. And when you open them up, the bees have something to defend now, and they start coming at you very aggressively, and it's a lot less fun to work with them. And I think we can be just like that. When we feel we have a ton of stuff we need to defend against others, we become more aggressive, we become more closed off. And that the Christian journey is about being open and vulnerable to welcome others in.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.